Okay, so let's dive into this. We're talking about the Osaka Expo 2025. It's happening right now, April through October, a huge international event in Japan, a really big deal.
Absolutely. A major global gathering, years in the planning stages.
But as we look through the source material you provided, articles, research, some online chatter, something interesting emerged.
Yeah, specifically around how younger Japanese people are engaging with it, or
Yeah.
maybe not engaging with it.
Right, that's the puzzle the sources seem to point to. It's their expo happening right there. But reports suggest, well, less enthusiasm from young people compared to maybe other groups or past expos.
Mm-hmm.
So the big question, and we're sticking just to what these sources tell us, is what's driving that hesitation?
And that's our mission for this deep dive, really,
Mhm.
to dig into those sources, articles, surveys, social media observations cited, and pull out the key reasons they suggest are behind this, strictly what's in the material.
And it's not just one single thing, is it? The sources paint a picture of like several factors kind of swirling together.
Exactly. We're looking at some pretty significant concerns around personal information, the cost involved, even some political views mentioned, and how the media coverage might be playing a part.
That personal information piece, the sources really go into detail there. Some of it sounds, well, quite surprising.
Yeah, it's presented as less of a single complaint and more of a maybe a perfect storm of issues that particularly resonate or maybe clash with younger generations, according to these sources.
Okay, so this material, drawing on surveys and specifically social media posts from X, formerly Twitter, it kind of boils it down to four main
And that's
areas.
what the sources lay out. Four key reasons for the reported hesitation. One, big worries about personal information being collected.
Oh.
Two,
Uh-huh.
the high cost of actually going.
Hmm.
Three, political reasons that get mentioned. And four, the steady stream of, well, negative media coverage.
And the sources say these are intertwined, yeah, not totally separate boxes.
Right, they feed into each other.
Let's start with that first one then, the personal info, because, wow, the sources spent a lot of time here. It seems you have to create an Expo ID to even get in.
That's the setup described.
Yeah.
And this ID registration process is where a lot of the privacy concerns seem to be rooted based on the
Yeah.
material.
And what kind of information are we talking about? The sources listed out, don't they?
They do, and it's extensive.
Yeah.
According to the official policies cited, your name, address, phone number, email, okay, standard enough maybe, but then passport number, credit card number, location data,
Wait, passport number just to attend an expo?
that's what's listed. And
Oh.
it goes on. Biometric information's like a face photo, fingerprint, a voice sample.
Your fingerprints, voice sample.
No, Plus, your affiliation, like where you work or study, potentially medical information.
Statical information, seriously.
And even social media account information. It's a very long list presented in the sources.
Okay, that does sound like a lot. I can see why people might react. The sources mention some social media comments.
Yeah, they quote reactions like, too scary, or calling it an invasion of privacy. Someone reportedly posted on X, that's impossible. That kind of disbelief.
And there's a specific worry mentioned about where that data might go.
Yes, another quote highlighted in the material expresses concern that this data could end up with third parties and foreign governments. And the sources make a point of noting that younger people are often seen as particularly privacy conscious, so this kind of data request might hit them harder.
So what's the official reason given in the sources for collecting all this? What's the justification?
Well, the operational reasons cited are things like managing ticket purchases, booking specific events within the expo, using their digital wallet system.
Ah, the Nereid UPE wallet, right.
Yeah.
The Expo's own payment thing.
Exactly. That integration is mentioned. Also selecting volunteers and, marketing analysis, standard event management functions, basically.
And the sources mention using things like the Line app for logging in.
Yeah, integration with the services like Line for authentication is noted. And the sources suggest this itself is another area where users might have privacy questions.
Okay, this detail from the sources really stood out to me. Apparently, the original plans were even more ambitious.
That's what the material claims. That initially there were discussions or perhaps even plans to collect fingerprints and social media passwords.
Passwords, social media passwords.
I know. The sources say that detail, when it surfaced, caused quite a backlash online, people calling it too dangerous, things like that.
Understandable.
And while the sources do note that the organizers, the Japan Association, are reportedly looking at revising the terms because of this feedback,
Mm-hmm.
they also stress that, well, A certain level of distrust seems to linger, especially among the young people mentioned, just because the amount of sensitive data still being asked for is so significant.
Okay, so if they're collecting all this data, the next logical question is, where does it go? The sources tackle this, particularly the concern about sharing with foreign companies.
Right. The reason given in the material is pretty direct. Data is shared with Expo sponsors. It's part of the deal, the sponsorship contracts.
And this includes companies from other countries.
Yes, the sources list examples. They mention AstraZeneca KK, which is British Swedish Pharma, and Alexion Pharma GK, another international biopharma company.
So big international names.
But they also mention domestic sponsors like Iwasaki Electric and Mouse Computer are on the list too. So it's not exclusively foreign companies, but the sources highlight that foreign sharing aspect as a particular point of anxiety for some people.
And what does the official policy say about when data is shared? Is it always with permission?
According to the privacy policies cited in the sources, it's primarily shared with the user's consent. But there's a clause allowing sharing without consent in specific situations, like if the law requires it or for, public interest reasons.
Sources mention some data protection measures for overseas users, like GDPR.
Yeah, they note that for users outside Japan, things like standard contractual clauses based on Europe's GDPR and the UK's GDPR standards are supposedly applied. These are generally seen as strong data protection frameworks.
But despite those official measures, the sources show there's still anxiety.
Definitely. They contrast the policy with user comments found online, fears that data will be spread to countries and overseas exhibitors. And there's even an extreme view quoted suggesting that maybe one of the goals is to leak personal information of Japanese people overseas.
Wow, that shows a real depth of distrust there.
It certainly captures the level of concern reflected in the source material.
Now, within this whole privacy discussion, the sources highlight one area as particularly controversial, the healthcare pavilion. What's the specific issue there?
Ah, yes, the healthcare pavilion. According to the sources, this is a place where they collect personal health data. Things like muscle mass, bone density, skin condition, even brain cognition metrics.
And the purpose is?
The stated purpose is twofold: generating personalized avatars for users and conducting research.
Okay, but there was a problem with how that data was handled.
That's the controversy the sources describe. Apparently, the original plan was to provide this health data for research only after removing information that could identify the person. Standard anonymization, basically.
Makes sense.
But then, the sources claim that the privacy policy of SBI Holdings, a company involved with the pavilion, reportedly indicated that data could actually be provided to third parties before this identifying information was fully deleted.
Oh, so potentially identifiable health data could be shared.
That was the concern raised, yes.
Mhm.
The sources point out this drew immediate criticism because, obviously, providing data before it's properly anonymized greatly increases the risk it could be linked back to an individual later on.
And this specific issue just added fuel to the fire.
Exactly. According to the sources, it really intensified the existing distrust around data handling, particularly among those younger groups already sensitive to privacy issues.
Okay, so privacy, data collection, data sharing, that's clearly a massive piece of the puzzle, according to the sources. But what about the other reasons they mentioned for this hesitation?
Right, it's not just the data. The sources are clear that the financial burden is another major factor.
Just the cost of the ticket?
The admission fees are mentioned as high, yes,
Uh-huh.
but also the transportation costs to get to Osaka and the Expo site.
Okay.
The material even includes a quote from X, someone saying something like, "Travel expenses are too expensive, and it's hard to keep up with friends," which points to, not just the individual cost, but the social aspect. It's harder for young people to afford to go together as a group.
That makes sense. What about the political angle the sources mentioned?
Yes, political reasons are cited as another factor. The sources neutrally state that some people express distrust towards a specific political party, the Isshin no Kai, that's a party mentioned in the source material.
And this is cited as a reason not to go.
Based on the examples provided in the sources, yes. They include quotes from ex-posts like, "I won't go because I don't like the Isshin no Kai." The sources just present this as one viewpoint found online that contributes to non-attendance for some.
Got it. And the final piece mentioned was media coverage.
Yeah, negative media coverage. The sources suggest that ongoing reports about problems with the expo are dampening enthusiasm.
What kind of problems are we talking about?
The material lists several things: construction delays, budgets blowing out, specific issues with the venue itself, like methane gas being detected or problems with insect infestations, not exactly glowing reports.
Not ideal, no.
And the sources even point to some pretty extreme social media posts that were circulating, like one warning about multiple deaths and telling people they absolutely must read the privacy policy.
Wow.
Now, the sources present these not necessarily as fact, but as examples of the kind of information and sentiment out there in the media, online, that they believe is actively undermining trust in the expo, especially among younger potential visitors.
So, if we pull all these threads together based only on what's in the source material,
Yeah.
the picture that emerges is that this reported hesitation among young Japanese people isn't about just one thing, it's a mix.
It really seems to be a confluence, according to the sources. You've got these deep privacy fears really driven by the amount and type of data being asked for that Expo ID.
The sharing with sponsors, that whole healthcare pavilion controversy adding to it.
Right. Then you layer on the practical issue of cost tickets, travel,
Yeah.
making it hard to go with friends.
Plus, the political sentiment noted in some online discussions, and this constant backdrop of negative news stories and social media buzz about delays and problems.
Exactly. The sources suggest it's this combination that's creating the friction and leading to the reported reluctance we started with.
The sources also kind of hint that dealing with this situation could be, well, a challenge, but maybe also an opportunity for Japan.
Yeah, they touch upon that, suggesting it raises questions about improving information literacy, especially among young people, and maybe about aligning Japan's data protection regulations more closely with international standards, given all the scrutiny the Expo policies are receiving.
And the bottom line, as of when this source material is current, which was May 31st, 2025,
Is that transparency and actively working to rebuild trust around these specific concerns, data, cost management, are seen as pretty crucial for the Expo's overall success, according to the sources.
so, stepping back, what does this specific situation in Osaka mean for you, our listener, wherever you happen to be?
Well, it really taps into some bigger themes we see everywhere, doesn't it?
I think so. It highlights these growing tensions around how much personal data we're asked for, especially at big events or when using new tech.
Yeah, and how the public reacts when major public projects face big cost overruns or controversies.
And it really underscores the power of media narratives and especially social media buzz in shaping how people feel about these massive initiatives and whether they want to participate.
So just to quickly recap the core insights from the sources we looked at. This reported hesitation among young Japanese people toward the Osaka Expo seems to come from a blend of really significant concerns about data collection and sharing, especially that sensitive health data aspect, combined with the real barrier of high costs, some cited political feelings, and the impact of negative reporting and online discussion.
Which leaves us with a final thought, drawing from all this. As we're increasingly asked to share more and more personal information to participate, whether it's expos, online platforms, whatever, we're constantly facing this trade-off. How much data is too much? And maybe more importantly, who gets to decide where that line is drawn?